However, the police officer said that she was suspected of being involved in a major and important case. Before the case was tried, she could not meet or contact her family members, or even hire a lawyer for the time being. Elaine was full of hatred in her heart, but there was nowhere to vent. After entering the high wall of the detention center, the police officers immediately took Elaine to go through the detention formalities. The procedures are complicated. Not only do they need to take pictures and verify her body, one also have to take off all clothes and hand them to the detention center, and then change into the prison uniforms and uniform daily necessities provided by the detention center. Elaine changed into prison uniforms, and the 2 police officers who had sent her over have already left. From now on, everything about her will be under the management of the detention center. A female prison guard took her into the prison, and as she walked, she introduced to her as usual, "This is a cell with 20 people. Get up at 6 in the morning, turns off the lights at 10 in the evening, and has 3 meals a day. They all eat in their own cell." After that, she glanced at Elaine and said blankly, "However, the meals are all quantitative. You may not be able to eat completely with your physique. If you need any food or daily necessities, you can let your family give it to you. We charge a little money in your name, and then you can buy things in the canteen inside." "That's great." Elaine hurriedly asked, "How do I contact my family?" At this time, the female prison guard remembered that when the police officer sent Elaine over, she explained her affairs, so she said with a cold face, "I almost forgot, you are a suspect in a major criminal case and cannot contact the outside world for the time being. So if you don't have enough to eat, consider it a diet." When Elaine heard this, her heart was suddenly desperate. Suddenly she thought at this moment that the old Mrs. Wilson and Wendy seemed to have been put in the detention center too. Would she not run into them? Thinking of this, she couldn't help feeling a little nervous. But soon the tension disappeared. It doesn't matter if she meet old Mrs. Wilson and Wendy. Old Mrs. Wilson is a bad lady, and if she dares to incite her, she can kick her half of life with one kick. As for Wendy, although this little girl is young, she is also a little girl with 10 fingers that does not touch the sun. Her small physique can't even carry 2 laps at the mahjong table. She really wants to start with herself. The slap in the face will be enough. At this time, the prison guard pointed to the cell not far in front and said, "Elaine, that is cell 025, you will be here from now on." Elaine nodded hurriedly. At the same time, in cell 025, Mrs. Wilson just calmed down a little bit under the comfort of everyone. She really didn't expect that these inmates in the cell would sympathize with her so much. Everyone gathered around to comfort herself with a word or two, which really made her feel more comfortable. Wendy's mood is much better than when she first entered the detention center. She felt that the detention center must be the same as in the movie. There are all kinds of bullies everywhere in the detention center. Newcomers will be bullied and humiliated all kinds of things when they come in. They can't even eat food, but she didn't expect it to be so warm inside. At this moment, someone looked at the door and shouted, "Here is a newcomer." Outside the iron gate, the female prison guard opened the cell where the old Mrs. Wilson was, and pushed Elaine into the cell, saying, "Go in and reflect on it." As soon as Elaine was pushed in, the iron door closed again. She looked a little nervously at the other prisoners in the cell, and found that they were all surrounded by a lower bunk. She was still a little surprised, and said to herself, "Why are these old ladies in a circle? What about it? Listening to a story?" At this time, the old Mrs. Wilson, who was surrounded by the crowd, recognized Elaine at a glance. She trembled in shock immediately, and then shouted with Canthus, "Elaine! You shrew, you have today." Elaine was startled by the sudden voice. Taking a closer look, it turned out that Mrs. Wilson was sitting cross-legged on the bed, pointing at her and cursing the street. The old Mrs. Wilson did not expect that she would encounter Elaine in the detention center. Moreover, Elaine was wearing the same prison uniform as her own in the detention center. It seemed that she was arrested for committing a crime. After Elaine saw the old Mrs. Wilson and Wendy, she was also very flustered. She really didn't expect that she was actually placed in the cell where the two of them were. Just now she was thinking about not splitting up with the two of them, but didn't expect to be so unlucky. So she hurriedly shouted at the small window of the iron gate while the prison guard was not far away. "Comrade prison guard, can you change me to a new cell? I don't want to live with the two of them." The prison guard said blankly, "Do you think your house opened the detention center? You can change it if you want. You don't want to live in a cell. Don't commit any crime. Why did you come early?" Elaine hurriedly defended, "I have explained it to you. That thing was completely done by my rubbish son-in-law. It has nothing to do with me. Go catch him and let me go, please." The prison guard ignored Elaine's begging eyes and said, "Don't talk so much nonsense. You don't want to go out for the rest of your life." After speaking, he turned around and left. Elaine watched the other side's back go further and further, and her heart gradually sank. Wendy sneered at this time and said, "Elaine, you just moved into the Thompson first-class villa, and you haven't slept for a while. Why did you come to the detention center? According to the prison guards, you are still committing a serious crime."